The Honda Civic has finally returned. It is a fact that several have waited for this moment, and for several varying reasons. The Honda Civic is a powerhouse, the Japanese company's best-selling model name worldwide, with over 800,000 sold annually in different body styles. It is currently on sale in 170 countries, and the new Honda Civic is in its 10th generation cycle that debuted worldwide in 2016. We last had the 8th generation car that sold from 2007 to 2012, and then we never got the 9th. This new Honda Civic will be launched next month, so that's when we'll know the prices too. We were invited to Bangalore to test the new Gen Civic, and I began my drive on the petrol CVT, dressed in a new shade, platinum white pearl. The car does aim to please on styling with a rather edgy, sharp design, in line with what Honda is doing globally. The chrome in the grille works, though I do prefer the US spec, where it is an all-black finish with no chrome. It's a very pronounced, almost exaggerated coupe roofline that really makes the car look really distinct and pretty sexy too, the way that kind of swoops into the rear, and then the rear itself is also really sharp, very nicely designed. In the face is where you see what's now become the most well-established Honda look, I think, that we've had for some time, because you know, you had little elements in the past, but now it's really sharp and it's extremely recognizable. You see this kind of styling and straight away from a distance you know it's a Honda, and on the Civic I think it becomes more so. You straight away know it's a Civic. So lots of little edges, lots of really sharp lines. The one that I really like is the one in the hood, which kind of comes up here and then goes inwards. It almost gives you a little streamlined sense of performance, power, agility. I like that. All that chrome in front, usually not a fan. On the Honda models though, it seems to work. You've seen it on the new CR-V, you've now seen it on the Amaze. Of course, now here it is on the Civic too. I wish they had more imaginative colors. I'm getting a little tired of seeing the same reds, silvers, blacks, whites on all Honda cars. Well, no escaping that, but otherwise I have to say the LED headlamps, the DRLs and all of that sharpness, yeah, it looks good. The new LED head and tail lights are very modern and distinctive, and yes, there are daytime running lights or DRLs. The tail lights in particular, with their C shape, that is C for Civic by the way, are the car's most stylish, modern and recognizable feature. The 17-inch wheels are only on the top spec, with 16 inches as standard across other variants. On the whole, the car is wider, longer, and yet has the exact same 2700 mm wheelbase of the last car that we had. It is a shade lower than that car in height, though only by a few millimeters. Inside too, the car appears more modern. While the plastics and other material quality are good, the finish is a bit dull. The instrument cluster is virtual and animates when you turn on the ignition, but the layout and overall dash design are not very original. There is the customary 7-inch touchscreen that gives you the usual connectivity, nav and music options. Cruise control buttons and a bunch more are on the steering. So I wanted to connect my smartphone because I wanted to see how the Apple CarPlay works on the screen, and I kept looking for where to plug it in. Now I found one USB connect back here, typically where it is in the middle of the bin, and the screen kept saying, when safe, please confirm that your smartphone is connected to the USB port, which has a smartphone icon on the lid. Well, I'll tell you what, I looked everywhere, couldn't find it, and then finally, after much searching, yeah, down there, that's where it is. And there's the smartphone on the lid. There's the USB. And there's actually space down here to keep your phone too. So that's kind of nice, but I'll tell you what, finding it was really, really tricky. You get a really nice padded armrest-like edging to the area between the front seats, which houses the storage bin and cup holders. It is almost akin to an arm from a padded armchair and is especially comfortable for the passenger. Bottle holders on the doors are also present, as is a sunroof on the top variant. The seats are exceptionally comfortable for their ergonomics, position, and material. Now, with that coupe roofline, I heard a lot of the other guys talking about how, you know what, it's going to be really compromised in here. Honestly, it's not so bad. And I think the work that's been done on the India spec to make this rear seat more comfortable, big credit, because it's really nicely bolstered, it's nicely contoured, you've got a lot of cushioning, and the angle is just right. You also get a decent sense of under thigh support. It's not completely there, and decent leg room too. So rear AC vents, the whole experience of sitting back here therefore becomes pretty comfortable. And yeah, you've got the drop down armrest as well. Having said that, if you've got 3 people back here and you start getting pressed up against the side, then yes, the roof might start to play with you. And then remember, people much taller than me, there are many, they might just find it a little bit compromising. But on the whole, I don't think it's a huge worry area. What could be though is the fact that the sense of space that you get from this cabin isn't necessarily larger than the other car, the previous Civic, and it's certainly not larger in that sense from the competition. So you don't get this sense of being very roomy, even though in terms of actual dimensions, it's not bad. The old car's flat floor is gone, but Honda says it has lowered the seating height so as to avoid taller passengers from hitting the roof. The car is loaded well with safety features. ASEAN NCAP tests have given it a 5-star crash rating, and Honda India claims the same build quality on the Indian car. There are 6 airbags, and that includes curtain airbags also. ABS, EBD, Hill Start Assist, Stability Control, ISOFIX child seat mounts, and plenty more make up an exhaustive list of safety features, which is great to see. The car also gets the lane watch camera on the left outside mirror. That's like the one we've seen on the CR-V. It shows you a view of the rear left lane so you don't have any blind spots and can easily switch lanes or turn. The display shows up on the 7-inch screen in the central console and comes on automatically when you use the turn indicator to the left, or can be switched on using a button on the end of the indicator stalk itself. The petrol engine is familiar, is reasonably powerful, but as is the case with most CVTs, is dulled somewhat by the very linear progressive build-up that transmission provides. The action gets a little bit more exciting with the use of the paddle shifters. The CVT gets a sport mode, but all that does is gives you higher revs and a more sporty sound, okay, you can call it a growl, from the engine. In performance terms, not much changes. Yet I will say that the CVT is a good idea. Most people buying the car for a self-drive option will be using it in heavy traffic, and here the CVT's mileage prowess and sheer comfort will shine through. The car's claimed mileage is 16.5 kilometers per litre, which is certainly better than expected. On the highway too, it cruises very comfortably and smoothly, largely in the realm of typical usage, isn't it? Now, if you want things to get more engaging, opt for the manual, though yes, that is only on the diesel. The petrol could have been the more modern 1.5-litre turbocharged petrol that Honda has on the Civic in the US, and that has 2 states of tune to put out either 174 or 205 bhp. And what's more, it still gives you about 15 kilometers per litre of fuel efficiency. Yeah, a cost-related missed opportunity, I reckon, which is just too bad. Meanwhile, on the engine that we are getting, Honda says the petrol buyer in the mid-size sedan segment typically seeks automatic, and that's why there is no manual being offered on the IV Tech. And apparently the opposite is true for the diesel buyer. I reckon that that's an engineering cost issue again, more than any buyer trend that really led Honda India to this decision. Oh well. Honda doesn't deny any possibility for other powertrains in the future, read hybrid or EV, but for now it's only these engines, and the 1.8 IV Tech is already BS6 compliant according to the company. It's interesting how Honda thinks that petrol buyers in this segment prefer automatics, and which is why it's going with just the CVT on this particular car.
On the diesel, of course, it's the other way around. I'll get to the diesel in a bit. But the CVT works well. The sport mode, though, just makes it all very revvy and excited. It's not a huge difference in terms of the performance. But you're used to that with a CVT. If you're looking for sporty performance, the CVT is not for you anyway. Speaking of which, sporty performance, well, I have to say that with that enhanced ride height, I was a little bit worried about that. But yes, the Civic characteristic of being sporty certainly does come through. Is it as sporty as an Octavia? No. Is it sportier than the Corolla? Oh yeah, you bet. So ride quality kind of enhances that by also delivering. I think that's been specifically worked on. Certainly shines through.
The car has definite presence and looks modern and sharp, front and back. But oh, those boring colors. I did switch to the radiant red diesel once we got up to Nandi Hills, which allows for some nice twisty driving on the way up and down. The petrol had handled admirably on the way up, and the steering, though not as stiff as I'd have liked, was rather precise. On the diesel, the handling feels even crisper as the marginally heavier nose end launches into and out of corners a little bit better. There is a slight loss of traction on the rear wheels if you try and intentionally oversteer the car, but that is within acceptable limits. The turbo diesel is well tuned for mileage and has a massive 26.8 kilometers per litre claim. That sadly is all too obvious as you begin the drive. I'd expected a lot more power and the car to feel quicker in this variant. While performance is not disappointing, it lacks the punch that you'd expect. Low-end torque kicks in a tad later than you'd like, and so if you want to stay quick, lower gear driving becomes the ID Tech's Achilles heel.
This car is not really as quick as I would have liked, but having said that, I think the ride and handling really makes up for it. Two things that go in the favor of the diesel. One is the manual gearbox. It just becomes so much more fun and engaging. And I think the extra weight up front also kind of gives you a nicer sense of that dynamic when you're especially going around corners. I mean, right now I'm just on a straight highway, but yeah, I think I've really enjoyed the second stretch of my driving a lot more. Having said that, think about the kind of buyers who are in this segment. The ones who want to drive themselves primarily are going to be in city traffic anyway, and the CVT really then works well in those conditions. And for many others, it becomes chauffeur driven, where I suppose the manual then does become the more relevant gearbox. But the big takeaway from the Civic, petrol or diesel, ride and handling.
The ground clearance for this India spec has been increased by 20mm in front and 15mm at the back. Having driven over a variety of roads, I can safely say that the ground clearance is not an issue whatsoever. I know you're now probably wondering where I stand on this car. It has some obvious flaws and some great strengths, but to me it's also about its legacy, and therefore the return of the Civic nameplate to India is just terrific. I welcome it warmly, and I also now hope that Honda prices it sensibly. That won't just be great news for Civic fans, but also for the ailing mid-size segment that badly needs a hit.